think the most common source of pushback that we get, and I understand where it comes from, is to the idea of incrementalism. You know, really central to the small towns philosophy is the idea that resilient systems and resilient places are built from the bottom up by many different hands, and therefore through a bunch of really small steps. And that doesn't mean that that process can't happen rapidly, but it means that cities need to be humbling themselves to not look for the silver bullet solution to whatever the pressing problem of the moment is. You know, we're going to do a $1 billion redevelopment district in our downtown, and that's going to revitalize everything. Or we shared an article that I found, we shared it from the Strong Towns social media feeds about a month ago, about the collapse of a crucial, and those were the words in the headline, a crucial 13,000 unit housing development in Concord, California. And the comment that we had on it was, as soon as you see the phrase crucial 13,000 unit housing development, like something is out of balance here. But I know a lot of people, and I'm sympathetic to the people who would say the scale of the housing crisis in the San Francisco Bay Area is colossal, and we need all the units we can get, and small developers aren't up to the task. And we should be cheerleading projects like this because these are the people who have the means to move some earth and get something built. You see it with public transit advocates. We have kind of clashed, I think, from time to time with transit advocates who are really motivated by a sense of urgency about, you know, whether the issue is environmental, whether it's social equity or whatnot, but there are a lot of reasons to say we need to get Americans out of their cars, including reasons that Strong Towns would absolutely endorse. Car-dependent development patterns are incredibly costly. They tend to be financially insolvent. They tend to be really, really fragile after a generation or two. We can't keep doing this. We can't keep building a world that looks like the world we've built since the 1950s. And so the transit people will say, we need huge amounts of federal investment from the top down, and we need to build light rail, heavy rail, BRT, the works, but we need to be doing it everywhere in, you know, spread out Sunbelt metros in the Northeast, like, you know. And so, for example, I wrote a criticism last spring of a $3 billion light rail project in the Raleigh-Durham area that kind of fell apart. And it fell apart amid opposition from Duke University to having a station on its campus, along with some other issues. And the local planners were saying, this is a disaster for us. For 20 years, we've been planning for this enormous light rail line that was going to snake through the suburbs of Chapel Hill and Durham, and it was going to connect research, biotech businesses, and it was going to connect research universities. And we planned all of our land use plans incorporated this. All of our affordable housing plans were centered around the assumption that we're going to have this light rail. And now Duke is going to be selfish and we can't have our light rail. And I get it. I get the impulse to say we have huge problems, we need huge solutions. And it's a much harder path to envision to say we need solutions that can scale. We need solutions that can go, like in any other time, and forgive the if this comes across as insensitive, like a month ago I would have with no hesitation said we need solutions that can go viral. And perhaps that's a little bit off color right now. But really that's what Strong Towns is about, is it's not about slow change. It's not about the crisis that you care about isn't important enough. It's about, we can't do that $3 billion light rail project that's dependent on buy-in from a bunch of big institutions and then do it again and again and again and again until we've transformed America's development pattern. We need to work from the foundations of how are we going to build a system that looks totally different from the bottom up, and how are we going to empower thousands or millions of people to participate in building that world. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow for people who are a little bit more focused on, this is the urgent crisis I care about, and we need to do something now.
I want to say it this way and see if you push back on this, Daniel. Because I feel like, particularly in the writing that you did, Daniel, on the Green New Deal, when that proposal first came out, I think we have found, particularly among this, the four of us here have very different, I think, political inclinations, very different voting habits and voting patterns. I think that that's true throughout the Strong Towns movement. I think when I think back of your writing on the Green New Deal, that what we agreed on in consensus is that, here's the goals that we share. Here's the things that we're trying to accomplish. And what the struggle really is, at least the biggest friction that I see, is between an impulse to centralize, an impulse to kind of go big or go home, an impulse to say we understand the problem thoroughly, and so we have the answer, and let's just be brave and bold and go do it. And this, and I'm casting this in good versus evil terms, and I know there's nuance to this, but you know, the opposite terms, which is more of a humility based approach, which is like, okay, boy, this problem's really complex. There's a lot of different moving parts here. We don't understand them all. By working incrementally, we're going to allow for feedback. We're going to allow for ourselves to learn and to grow and to change. We're going to be respectful of people along the way and the way they're going to react to things. I feel like the big tension and the big critique of strong towns today comes from the centralizers, what Nassim Taleb would call the fragilistas, the people who, in a sense, tend to simplify down to like one or two things. And I feel like a lot of the unwind we're seeing right now, as our economy, you know, goes into this hibernation mode, we're not able to hibernate because we've centralized and aggregated everything in one place, and it can't sit still for 2 weeks, 2 months, 4 months, the way that a more natural organic system could. So Daniel, I don't know if you have a objection to the term centralizers or not, but that's the way that I've been looking at it most recently.
Because it's interesting when you start to overlay that on top of the left-right political spectrum, which I increasingly doesn't capture this tension between top and bottom very well at all. But I think people default to certain understandings of these are the pressing problems in the world and these are the tools we have to solve them. And Strong Towns has challenged my thinking because it proposes a totally different set of tools and a totally different approach that is uncomfortable if you are used to wanting the solution, the plan, you know. And I think the way I would put it, for the people whose life's work is motivated by moral urgency, because I'm one of those people, I know a lot of those people, and I get the discomfort, is what you want is to create a world in which the solutions to the problems that you find urgent are going to come from 1,000 different places at once, and those 1,000 people are going to each inspire 1,000 people, and it's all going to unfold in ways that you haven't even imagined yet. And a lot of that comes down to the starting conditions. And if you can get that right, and if you can get rid of these really dysfunctional systems that are impeding people from co-creating a better world, I think that we'll be amazed by what happens.